was like, it all makes sense now. And like, this isn't about me. It's about something so much bigger. And when you allow that to guide you and lead the way and have trust in that, that is like definitely a reframe that is very, very helpful on this path, because it's so easy to get caught up in all of your own stuff and then get in your own way from getting your magic and your medicine out to the world.
Welcome to Trujectory, the podcast committed to helping you align with who you really are, your true self. The one who is so comfortable with their uniqueness, so in love with life, and so effortlessly able to manifest everything they always dreamt of. I want this podcast to be a resource to help you jump into the driver's seat rather than continuing as a passenger in your own story. Let's understand why we choose to hold ourselves back so we can shed the lies that we've programmed into our minds. We can heal the root causes and step into the epic human that we know we can be. If you're ready to start aligning with your trajectory, let's do it. Okay, I've got to stop smiling. I'm already smiling so big because Nina is here. Hello,
Nina. Hello.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much for giving me your time. I am so excited to talk to you. There's so many things. I mean, we just jumped on to have a little pre-chat. It's already been half an hour. We could just talk for hours, I think. So for everyone listening, Nina is a very talented psychic channel, healer, and mentor. I know because I've worked with her and we're going to be talking about that. She is activating soul-led entrepreneurs into their next level of prosperity, impact, and mastery of their gifts. And she's based in Stockholm, Sweden, right?
Sweden, yes.
Yeah, like my
geography.
Geography is very poor over here. But thank you so much for joining me. So how are you doing today? It's morning over there, right?
Yes, it is. I'm doing well. Thank you for inviting me to your show. I'm really excited to be here and to chat with you. And I'm a talker, so.
I love that.
Yeah.
I mean, at the start of this podcast journey for me, I need talkers, right? I don't want someone to answer yes, no, maybe. Oh, okay, next question. Sorry. So, I mean, I was just actually listening before we started back on the recording of a session that you and I did it was about 6 weeks ago. And when I listened back to that, it's actually blown my mind, because the things that we worked on during that session and we healed, they're all the things that I'm working with now. I'm putting into action. I have shed so many layers since that time, and that's only like 5 or 6 weeks. And I mean, I think we all go through periods of our life where we can have a bit of a quantum leap here and there, and then suddenly everything makes sense. But I haven't had such a big shift in a really long time. And when I came to you to do that reading, I hadn't had a reading and we need to talk about what a reading is for some of our listeners, because a lot of my listeners are very not into the spiritual sort of realm. So that's why I want to educate people on what you do, because it's so special. But I hadn't had a reading for over a year when I came to you. And so it was to get that confirmation of the things that I was wondering internally, the intuition that I was sort of doubting, and there was this fire in me that really wanted to start stepping into my soul purpose. But of course, all the doubt comes in and the second guessing, and well, is that my soul purpose? Oh, can I even do that? Oh, I can't do anything, can I? And you just go in these spirals of self-doubt, and you need someone like yourself who can tap in so clearly to who you are at your core, to your spirit team, your guides, and to give you some guidance. And I'm just so grateful. So honestly, thank you for what you do. But could you give our listeners a bit of a just rundown on what it is that you do? What is a psychic channel? What is the difference between a psychic and a channel? Is there a difference?
Ooh, so many questions. Yeah, I'd love to speak a little bit about that. So, what is the difference between a psychic and a channel? So basically, a psychic would be using their psychic senses to tune into your energy. And what I mean by that is that using your psychic senses, like clairvoyance, meaning clear seeing, clear hearing, is clairaudience or clairsentience. They can pick up on things through their psychic senses. And what they're essentially doing in a psychic reading is that they're tapping into your energy. Mm-hmm. What a channel does, on the other hand, is a channel is an energy translator. So the difference would be if I channel for you, I'm not tuning into your energy. What I'm doing is that I'm kind of stepping aside. My
Mm-hmm.
human brain and my human consciousness steps aside, and I invite your guides to speak through me. That would be called trance channeling. Sorry, I was a bit ahead of myself. But basically, when I'm channeling, I'm calling in your spiritual team, your spiritual guides, your higher self, all of the guides that are here supporting you on your soul path to communicate with you through me. So then I can essentially pick up on the messages through my psychic senses and channel them, or I can go into a trance channel. And trance channeling is kind of like, well, you probably already know Esther Hicks, but for those of you who maybe don't
Mm.
know, the law of attraction lady that speaks to a group consciousness. And she's essentially, I didn't even know she was a channel. I was like, who's Abraham? This woman is like delivering these amazing teachings and she's speaking in third person and talking about Abraham. It took me years to figure out that it wasn't actually her.
It took me a while as well. I was like, why are they
Yeah,
calling? They say she's Esther, but then they say she's Abraham. What is happening here?
so that's essentially what I do. So there are different ways of delivering messages, and every psychic, every channel is different. Everyone has their own gifts and their own way of bringing through those messages. But a channel is essentially an energy translator. The best way I can describe it, like I just got a visual in my mind, but like it's like energy is coming in through my crown chakra and I'm translating it with the vocabulary that is with my own consciousness, with whatever it is, my own
Mm.
level of experience of knowing. So it's translating the energy and doing that in a very precise way. And the
Mm.
reason why you can listen back to a reading and go like, "Oh my God, that was so activating." It's because they are activating. The words that come through, at least for me, I'm very, very precise about the words that come through. It's not just me making up things and saying, using my own words. I'm using the words that I'm receiving, the energy that I'm receiving. I'm translating that,
Mhm.
and they are delivered in a way that is very specific to you. And what happens is that the words that are delivered, they have a specific vibration and frequency. So when they're delivered to you, they sink in into your subconscious in the way that they're meant to do. And that's
Mm.
why some people can say, "Oh my God, like just having a reading can be so life-changing. It propelled me forward. It made me, quit my job, do this and do this." And it's not the information that did that. It's actually the vibration and energy of the information that came through that is activating. Does
Yeah,
that
it's
make
like
sense?
encoded into their cells, sort of thing. Like it's upgrading them in a certain
Absolutely.
way.
So
That,
if
I
you would
mean,
think that like it's vibration and sound, essentially.
mm,
The same way
mm.
it would be like if you've heard someone channeling light language, which is basically just sounds like gibberish. It is like it's the same thing there. It's the vibration and frequency of the sound that is
Mm.
transmitted that has an activating effect. And you can get that with channeling as well. So just receiving a transmission, meaning whatever it is that is being spoken, can be highly activating as well. So people start to remember who they are. They start to remember their soul purpose because there's
Mm.
a resonance. I don't know if you thought about that when we had our session, but it was a lot of like words that just landed right away, right?
Yeah, that is such a brilliant. I have actually never heard it explained that way before, and it makes so much sense. And I mean, at the core, everything is vibration and sound, right? All forms of healing. So this is just you're sort of tapping into the truth of it, even though there are the words and there are the stories you can attach to in what you're hearing and the messages coming through. But it is
Yeah.
actually it's a healing. It's re-encoding you, upgrading and activating you. And that's what I feel like, especially when I listen back to it, it has the same effect each time. And it's
Mm.
really interesting when you talk about trance channeling. There were a couple of moments in that reading where you can hear that you've been pushed out of the way and then you've stepped back in and you were communicating with Goddess Isis at one point and then you decided that you had a question and then she got bumped out and you had to apologize to her and then she came back in and it's just like there's this whole conversation going on and to someone who has no idea about any of this they would just think that we are just batshit crazy and I just love sharing this because 4 or 5 years ago, honestly, Nina, I didn't know any of this. I didn't know anything about any of this. I grew up very much wishing that these things were real, wishing that there was more outside of what we could physically see and touch and feel. I wrote a book about Atlantis when I was 17. I was obsessed with it, but I still was like, on a very deep level, like, of course it's real. But, then I step into the real world. I'm doing air quotes for anyone who's not watching. And all of those sorts of hopes and notions would just sort of fall away in the noise of everyday life. But when I had my awakening, everything changed, and it was actually understanding Atlantis and channeling that started, sending me on my path. But I wonder about you. Did you grow up with a very spiritual upbringing? Was your family very open to this sort of thing, or was it later in life?
Well, so I'm originally from India, even though I live in Sweden. I'm born and raised here, but both of my parents are Indian. So
Amazing.
Hindu family. So like
Wow.
my mom is quite spiritual, not at all
Mhm.
on this level, but like um, I wouldn't say that it was big for me when I was growing up. I was kind of intuitive now that I think of it because I've always had, I've been able to read people really well or like read the energy of a
Mm.
room or just know things sometimes. And I was a really witchy kid. Like I used to play with Ouija boards and do all sorts of weird witchy things.
Amazing.
Um, but then I believe at some point I kind of just tuned out of those abilities and I
Mm.
wasn't in touch with them at all. I've always been very, very spiritual. And I even remember like when I was 12 years old, my cousin gave me my first book of astrology. It's like a Bible. It's so thick.
Wow.
And it just started off with like every guy I had a crush on, I would read up about that star sign. And then all of a sudden I knew the whole zodiac. But I've always been really, really interested in magic, in magic
Hmm.
and in
Yeah.
mysticism. And as a kid, I would always love like these little rituals that my mom would do, and she would teach me things, but I wouldn't say super spiritual. I guess I was really, really interested in that as an adult, but it was more on an intellectual level. So I was
Mm.
reading all these books. I was, binge watching YouTube videos, everything spiritual, metaphysical, but I understood it on a very intellectual level.
Yeah.
I'll
Yeah.
explain what I mean by that. But um, I guess that was my level of spirituality until I went through a spiritual awakening, and that's when everything started to change. And that's when spirituality became more embodied and experienced rather than experienced on the level of the mind, if that makes sense. Then everything started to make sense rather than, okay, I read this and I intellectually understand this.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
yeah, that's when it changed. And I guess that was about what could it be now? Like 8 years ago, 7, 8 years ago when I went through a spiritual awakening. Yeah.
Do you mind if I ask what that looked like for you? Because I
Ask
mean,
away.
it's very different. It's different for everyone, right? But the thing that I find is people who haven't necessarily been through a big shift like that or a big awakening, it's very fluffy and airy, and there's not really anything tangible to it. And it also is looked at as this, oh, people just turn to say love and light. And it's like, actually, you kind of go this way. You kind of get shoved all the way down into the dirt until you work on your shit and you can come back and find who you are. But what was your awakening like, if you don't mind telling us
Oh, I
about
love
it?
that question because it's exactly as you said. You don't just wake up and go like, I've awakened. I
I'm
have arrived.
enlightened. I went past all the levels and now I know
Yeah.
it all. It's like, oh shit, I'm at square one. Oh.
Well, for me, at that point in time, like 8 years ago, I was working as a lawyer. Oh, I forgot to mention that I have a background as a lawyer. And
That's
up
right.
until that point in time, I thought I was living my purpose. I'm like, this is me. This is what I'm meant to do. This is what I've always wanted to do. And I've worked hard for it. And I was doing really well. I was, in the middle of my
Yep.
career and things were amazing.
And
And
bam.
and then I guess spiritual awakenings are triggered by different, it looks different for everyone, obviously. And there are certain things that can actually trigger it. In my
Mm,
case, I actually met someone. I don't know if this has ever happened to you, but if you meet someone and it feels almost like a deja vu, it's like, oh my God, I've met you before.
mm,
We've done this before. It was this soul
mm.
recognition. And it was the most mystical experience of my entire life. And then this was a person that I started dating, and I'm like, it sounds weird. I can't tell him that. And he's like, I think we've had past lives together because he felt the exact same way. He's like, oh, it
Wow.
feel like there was this instant soul recognition, this instant spark.
Yeah.
And so we dated for a while, and then all of a sudden it was like all of my shit came up. It was like such a soul remembrance that triggered something within me, like a dark night of the soul, if that's what you want to call it.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
I thought I was going crazy. I'm like, what is happening? And this is actually quite common, that a soulful connection can actually trigger a spiritual awakening, because I had no idea what was going on. So I was just like up all night, like Googling, like, what does this mean? And like twin flames and blah, 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 going down the rabbit hole of all of those things. Sorry, I went off on a tangent. Where was I?
All of your shit coming
All
up
this stuff
and
came up, right? And all of my wounds. And then I actually started to notice that everything in my life started to change. I
mm,
started going to work, and all of a sudden it was like I had woken up after like deep slumber, and I was actually wide awake, and I'm like, what am I doing? This is I'm doing everything on autopilot. I'm just waking up, I'm going to the same job each and every day. And then I was actually starting to feel like a piece of me was dying inside when I came to work every day, because I was
yes,
like,
I
what
know
am I
that feeling.
doing? And who are these people? Like these people, my work colleagues who I actually had, hung out with before. I
Yeah.
didn't have anything in common with them anymore. And I felt like such an alien, and I was like sitting there on our lunch breaks and just feeling like such a weirdo and talking about things that just didn't resonate with me at all. And I'm like,
Yeah.
what am I, it was like my soul was screaming inside, like, what am I doing here? Who are these people and what am I doing with my life? Um, so that's kind of how it started. So the interest to go even deeper into spirituality was there for obvious reasons, to kind of understand what I was going through. And
Yeah.
I also was guided to go to a plant medicine ceremony, which was something I'd never even heard of or even contemplated
Mm.
of doing before. And that's where things really started to get interesting.
Very colorful and bright. How was your experience? Was it
Um,
ayahuasca? Was it DMT?
it
Was
was
it
ayahuasca. It was
psilocybin?
ayahuasca. I
Ayahuasca.
would say like the first ceremony was not very eventful. Like, yes,
Mm.
I did see certain shifts. Um, but what was the most impactful was I believe it was like my second ceremony. I was like, okay, just show me what my purpose is. That was really my main intention, because up until that point, I was kind of like this. I was just devouring everything spiritual and metaphysical that
Mm.
I could get my hands on. And I'm like, what's my thing? What's my thing? I went on like solo trips to Bali and like would
Yeah.
see healers, and I'm like, okay, so my purpose, I didn't find it there. I went to India, I did a yoga teacher training, and I'm like, okay, that was nice, but that wasn't my thing either. So I was
Hmm.
desperately trying to find my thing. And I was seeking from like the level of the mind. I'm like, oh, yoga sounds cool. I'll do this. I'll do this. I'll do this. I did a Reiki course. Totally not my thing, which is funny because I'm a healer now. But
Yeah.
yeah, I was trying all these things, and it was almost like in a bit of a desperate energy, I would say, because I really was. It was kind of escaping my very mundane 9 to 5 legal career, which no longer felt aligned. And during that
Mm.
time where I was just hopping around, trying different things, having a midlife crisis, I was like, maybe, like, it wasn't entirely clear to me. I thought maybe I'm just in the wrong workplace. I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, I'll manifest a new job, because I understood this thing about manifesting. So I
Yeah.
manifested new jobs, several jobs, but
Yeah.
it
Wow.
was the exact same thing each and every time. It was that, you know, meaningless kind of, feeling when you come to work every day, and like the people that you don't have anything in common with. So it just started getting worse and worse.
Mm.
And I was feeling more and more unsatisfied, unfulfilled. And what happened was that my body was actually giving me the signals. So I developed like chronic fatigue, and
Mm.
I actually started getting like my immune system was really weak. So I was sick all the time. I would get sick like once a month, and then I would actually be happy. I was like, yes, now I can call in sick to work, which
Oh,
is
I know that
crazy.
feeling. I know that feeling. We'll talk about that later. Oh my
Yeah.
gosh, yes.
So I
Yep.
was actually ignoring the, like, your body's always speaking to you. And this was my body's way of saying, like, wake up. This is not what you're meant to do. But it's actually quite terrifying to realize that where you are is not actually where you're supposed to be. That
Mm.
is terrifying because it's an identity that you've had. It's something, for me at least, from a young age, is like, I want to be a lawyer when I grow up. That was my
Mm.
only
And
dream.
you
And
studied
then I'd work
hard to
hard
get
for it.
there. Yeah.
Yeah, I did. I mean, 5 years of law school, and then I had studied some other things as well. But then, yeah, and then working my way up to where I was. I mean, what else was I supposed to do with myself? Become some hippie and like travel? It was like these kind of thoughts. I'm like, it doesn't make sense. Of course, this is what I'm meant to do with my life because what else would I do? So it was kind of terrifying to even go there. It was like, no, it must be that I'm in the wrong place. Um, but then what happened with the plant medicine ceremony, and I'm circling back to
Love
where I
it.
left.
Love it. We're on a carousel. Great.
Um, so I was just like, okay, please, like Mother Ayahuasca, just show me who I am. Show me
Mm.
why I'm here. And oh my God, did she show me?
Really?
Yes, it was.
Oh.
So what happened was that I was tapped into what they called the field of all that is. And I was
Hmm.
like, what does that mean? I was tapped into to source. And it was just like having a telephone line to be able to access all of the answers to everything. It was like, this is everything. I was existing as pure consciousness and tapped into source. And I was
Wow.
able to communicate with my guides. And I'm like, oh my God, this is so cool. And then I was kind of having this needy energy. I'm like, is this gonna be here like even after this ceremony? And they're like,
Can we
yes,
take this
yes, put
home?
it
This
on
is
there.
a takeaway package.
Yes. I'm like, are you sure? They're like, yes, we're sure. So then they took me on a journey back, journeying into past lives, showing me many different lifetimes where I was a healer, a spiritual teacher, a channel, and really showing me the most beautiful, beautiful lifetimes where I've been
Mm.
doing this work. And then showing me, it was kind of a metaphor, but they were showing me what I'm here to do. And they were showing it, the visual was like vibration and frequency, like that I can sense and tune when someone is not really in alignment with their truth and who they truly are and their essence. And what I'm able to do is essentially get them back, the tuning fork that gets them back
Mm.
to that beautiful resonance. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
Um,
I've experienced it. Thank you very much. Look at me.
so
I'm
that's what
aligned.
they, yes. So I can basically hear the like, when you're out of
Yeah.
alignment, it's like it's an instrument that's just needs some fine
Yeah.
tuning.
Wow.
So they showed me all this stuff, and I was like, okay. And after the ceremony, I'm like, okay, I guess I'm psychic now or something. Um, because I didn't really know what to do with that information. So then I came
So,
home.
sorry, was that just quickly, was that the first time you'd ever met your team and seen your team and spoken to them?
Yes, yes.
Wow. Okay, that's incredible.
And it was funny because the next day I came home and then I sat down to meditate and then I was just asking, hello, is anyone there? No one was there.
Oh.
And I felt like a complete idiot. I'm like, did I make this up? Was this just like a psychedelic trip? Was it not real? And
Mhm.
I was really desperately trying to communicate with my team, like daily, and nothing was happening. And interestingly enough, a couple of months later, I was at a new job that I really hated. It was like the worst one out of the bunch. And I was actually secretly hoping to lose my job. I was like, wouldn't it be nice if they just fired me? Um, because I didn't really have like, I mean, it would be irresponsible to just like quit your job. Because I was supposed to travel to South America and go to some medicine retreats. And I'm like, am I really going to come back to this? Like, wouldn't it be nice if I just got fired so I didn't have to? And instant
Mm.
manifestation, the pandemic hit and I lost my job.
Oh,
And they
wow.
told me that they couldn't keep me anymore. And I was like, thank you. I was so happy. And they're like, okay. I'd never been happier.
That was
And
easy.
then all of a sudden I was in this place of just like flow and bliss. And I was just like, just so relaxed and so happy. And a week
Mm.
later is when I just randomly opened up to my psychic abilities. A week
Oh,
later, when I had left
wow.
my job. So then I was just
Wow.
sitting and meditating, as I usually do. And then I felt this like really strong pressure over my head.
Mm.
It felt like someone was pushing me down, and it was kind of scary. And I knew that someone was there because I was like, who's there? And then
Mm.
it was like this really, really loud voice that I could hear. Like it was not in my head, like I could actually hear it very, very loud and clear. And it was like the most natural thing in the world. It was like, of course, there you are. I've always been doing this. It wasn't like, wow, this was a new experience. Like it was a new experience, but it felt so familiar.
Yeah, suddenly you realize you've
Yeah.
been connected to them the whole time.
Yeah.
But how beautiful is that that you opened up right after you backed yourself and, whether you were fired or whether you ended up having to quit, if the pandemic didn't hit, you knew that you had to go and do this and you've surrendered. And then that's when you've been able to be open enough to let them come through. That's
Yeah.
incredible. Oh my
It
gosh.
is. It is really a beautiful story because I had actually asked my guide at the time, the first guide that I started working with. I worked with him for about a year before I started opening up to channeling other beings and guides. But I actually asked him, "How long have you been with me?" And he said, "I've been with you for a year." So I kept thinking, like, what happened a year ago? What happened a year ago?
Mm.
And what the guide that I was channeling, he's an ascended master. His name is Babaji.
Oh,
And
amazing.
then when I was thinking back, like what happened a year ago, and I just started Googling him. I'm like, oh, who is this Babaji? I didn't know
Yeah.
who, I'd never heard of him.
Very
And then
powerful.
turns out that he's the founder of Kriya Yoga, like a Himalayan yogi. So,
Mm.
and he's he was the human incarnation of Lord Shiva.
Mm.
So he has a temple in Rishikesh in northern India. I was in that temple exactly 1 year before, and
Oh,
it wasn't any, it wasn't like a wow experience. Like I've seen thousands of temples, so it was just the
yeah.
temple, and I went in and
Yeah.
I was like, cool, I've seen this. So it was not like nothing happened there, but I guess he wanted to hang out with me and was just
Yeah,
waiting
just
until,
followed you home.
yeah, and he was just waiting until I was, I guess, in a space energetically where I could be able to receive him. Because before I was trying so hard, I was like being really
Mm.
serious. I'm like, I'm gonna sit and I'm gonna meditate and I'm gonna do this spirit guide meditation and I'm gonna expect something to happen because that's the energy I was in of expectation and
Mm-hmm.
kind of making things happen when it kind of just naturally unfolded when I was relaxed, tapped into my feminine energy and just happy and
That's the thing. That's the thing, right? That's something that I've struggled with for such a long time because, I mean, that's the human nature part of us, right? We got to do it. We got to push harder. We got to work tougher. We've got to be serious. We got to focus. And the spiritual realm want you to relax and be like your inner child and just play and have fun. And that's why I've struggled for so long. I really relate to you when you say, you took it very seriously and you wanted to put some time in and talk to them. And, I have different ways of connecting with my team. It's not as clear and, you know, um, concise as what you get, the sort of answers that I get. I'm more claircognizant, so it's a knowing rather than a visual or a audio. But it's that constant seriousness that I've had for so long. It's only just now, the last few weeks, that I'm letting that go. And even when we did our session, you sort of tapped into my inner child and you were telling me that she was actually crying because she's like, "You're not having any fun. You're not having any fun with me. Why would I even bother trying to do these, podcasts and fun things that you want to do when you're not even honoring me, the inner child in you that wants to just laugh and be free? Like, we're just so serious."
playful. Yeah.
It's such an interesting, like, just it's just all backwards basically, right? Like everything we've learned, you have to unlearn if you want to start tapping into certain gifts sometimes. I mean, some people just get this hit, this lightning bolt of bam, oh, I can just connect now. And other people it sort of happens a little bit more gradually. But I I love the fact that 'cause this is what this podcast is for, right? For people who are not doing the jobs they want to do, who are working in jobs that they really dislike. And when you were saying that it was killing a part of you to be in that job, that's a part of my brand story. That is a part of why I'm doing what I'm doing because I worked in an office for 7 years doing things that I absolutely hated. I had no passion for. And that feeling that I had every single day for 7 years walking into these, I mean, I had multiple different jobs because I couldn't stay at one, right? I hated them all. I was a temp. I would just jump around every 3 months. They would offer for me to extend and I'd say, nope, I'm going to go somewhere else. I'm going to hate it equally, but at least it's different. And that feeling that I would have every morning of, oh my gosh, and the feeling of Fridays being the best day of the week because it's the last day of the week, and the feeling of Sundays, I hate Sundays because it's tainted my weekend because I got to go back to work tomorrow. All of those feelings. That's why I'm doing what I'm doing now. I want people to start doing exactly what you've done, which is to
Mhm.
honor that feeling that's coming up going, I don't want to do this anymore. And I need to face facts. I'm not going to let myself do this for the rest of my life. What am I going to do? And it's going to be messy, right? It's not going to be an easy, oh, I know exactly what I'm going to do. And here is the perfect job for me. You've got to work for it. But in your case, after you've now taken a step outside of the corporate world, outside of being a lawyer, and you've had your awakening, and now you're realizing that you have these gifts that were always with you, but now they're very much more prominent. You can work with them. What was it that sort of got you the clarity to understand what to do with them, and where did you go from there?
Oh my God, that's such a good question because a lot of people think that once you find your soul purpose, everything's going to be smooth sailing and it's going to be crystal clear. And I really want to say that that's not the case.
Mm-hmm.
Spoiler alert.
Yeah.
'Cause that was my idea of it. I'm like, okay, I'm in a job I hate, but when I find my thing, everything's going to be amazing.
Yep.
Um, and or, I mean, for some people, it can be. Absolutely. Your sole purpose, it's like walking in circles sometimes or like in zigzags. And
Mm-hmm.
it really is about starting to take those first steps, even when it is unclear, because it's not going to be crystal clear. Because when I opened up, so the first time I had like a 10-hour conversation with my guide because I was so fascinated. I wanted to know the answer
Wow.
to everything. So I'm like, who am I? Why am I here? And like, blah, blah, blah. And we were having so much fun. Like I was getting all these answers and he was teaching me things. And then, so I'm like, so what is it? What's the big picture? And he's like, I'm not going to tell you. I'm like, why not? And he's like, because at that time, the words he used, I'm not saying this, he's like, it's so big that if I would tell you, you wouldn't be able to handle it. Or like it would be
Mm.
overwhelming. And I was not happy with that answer, so I actually went to other readers and they're like, "No, it's not ready to be revealed to you." So I can still say, I've been doing this now for quite some time. I still don't know what the big picture is because they don't want to show me. They're like, "Your path is
Mm.
not to be shown now." Um, so I guess it is a question of trusting is really important because at that point in time, like it was the universe that did me a favor and got me fired so that I was in this space. I would have never quit my job. Even if I would
Yeah.
have like opened up to my abilities and been like, ooh, okay, I can be a closeted psychic and do this thing on the side, which would be like what? Like how many clients can you see when you have a full-time job?
Yeah,
Doing this
exactly.
thing, but I'm still going to pretend to be a lawyer by day. I would have
Mm.
totally ran with that because I would never have had the courage if this wouldn't have happened. And I remember when I was tapping in the beginning, I'm like, but what am I supposed to do? Should I run a business? Like what? And the message that came through was so beautiful. It's like when you are doing the work of God, you will always be supported. And I'm like,
Mm.
okay, that makes no sense. Like lawyer brain started looking for logic because even though I knew a lot about manifestation, I wasn't the type of person that believed that money can just fall out of the sky. Like some people,
Yeah.
like I just manifested all this money and I got a check in the mail. Like who gets checks?
I know.
And who's sending these checks? So I was like, okay, he said it, I'll chill. And then like, I'm not kidding you. All of a sudden, like all this money started coming in from really weird, unexpected sources. This had never happened before. And then there was some kind of he also guided me to to a website and there was an application you could fill out for new businesses to receive financial aid during the pandemic. And I'm like, oh damn.
Oh,
Okay, so I'm
hello.
financially set like while I'm figuring this stuff out. So that's what he meant. Like when you are doing,
Yeah.
like you really need to trust and have faith that you are supported. Um,
Mm.
and it's really never been an issue ever since. So that's really been uh, comforting to kind of relax into that you are always taken care of and that you can trust and that it's safe to trust. Um, but it hasn't been easy, I'm going to tell you that. So I
Mm.
started doing like readings for people for fun and then word kind of spread and then I was getting all these people from I don't know all corners of the world who were contacting me and wanted to get psychic readings and I was like, oh, that's interesting. And all of
Mm.
my stuff started coming up again, all of these limiting beliefs like I had never had any issues with like money before, like demanding a really high salary at my work, but all of a sudden I was like, I can't receive money for this. And like
Yeah.
all these limiting beliefs about myself, like who am I to do this? Like I'm not good enough, all of that stuff. And I was really going in circles, just I was just in my own way. And another thing I want to bring up because I think this is so important to anyone who is choosing a different path or choosing something that they're doing for the evolution of humanity or for the planet. So I had this experience where I was at home and I was like wallowing in self-pity, like, oh, I'm not good enough to do this, and like I can't do this, blah blah blah. And I remember I went into the bathroom. I had a friend over and she saw me go into the bathroom and I was like washing my hands, and then all of a sudden my guide lifts me up, and it was kind of like energetically I was
Mm.
like really really tall and I could see myself from above, this tiny little person going around in circles like I'm not good enough, I'm not good enough. And then he's like, what are you doing down there? When you have such a big mission, you have work to do. What are you doing down there? And then just that perspective of seeing myself from above, like, this is ridiculous. Like, this isn't about me. It's never about
Mm.
you when you're doing something that is bigger than you. And
Right.
it was just like this realization. I was like, oh my God, it sounds really simple, but it really sank in. And then I come out of the bathroom, I'm like, oh my God, everything makes sense. And like my friend's like, what happened to you in there? You know,
Best
that
bathroom
changed my
trip ever.
perception. And then I was like, it all makes sense now. And like, this isn't about me. And that's something I need to keep reminding myself of still, like even to this day, when
Mm.
things feel hard, when things feel scary, I'm like, okay, it's not about me and my insecurities. It's about something so much bigger. And when you allow that
Absolutely.
to guide you and lead the way, and have
Mm.
trust in that, that is like definitely a reframe that is very, very helpful on this path, because it's so easy to get caught up in all of your own stuff and then get in your own way from getting your magic and your medicine out to the world.
It is
So
such a good point. It's so true. And I mean, how many years and years of programming have we had before, before you stepped into this sort of work where you've got to do this to get this, you've got to work this way to get this much money. And you're an example of the proof that it does come down to trust, but you have to do a lot of work to be able to open up and rest back into that belief and faith that everything will be supporting you.
absolutely. And another thing, like when I about mentioning that it's not always a straight path. For
Mm.
me, for example, when they told me what I was here to do, they're like, you're here to be a channel, a teacher, and a healer. And in my mind, like I did at that point, I didn't know how much support and guidance there was available to us when it came to 3D stuff like business. So
Mm.
I was just thinking with on the level of the mind, like logically, I didn't believe that I could be a psychic channel and have a successful business with that. I'm like, that's just the extra. So I
Yeah.
started to think about what makes sense. So that was me leading with my logical mind of what makes sense. And then I saw that, oh, people are, coaching is a thing. That's like the fastest growing industry in the world. And
Mm.
I was doing all of
Exactly.
these readings and giving people the answers to absolutely everything in their lives and like who they are and what they're here to create. And then I'm like, but I want to be able to support them further.
Yeah.
And the way that I thought I could do that was with coaching because it made sense. So I'm like, oh, I could be a coach and then I'll have my little secret sauce of psychic work.
Yeah.
So I spend all this money to get a coaching certification and like get really fired up and took a business course to set up my business. And I just noticed that I was more drawn to the psychic work. Like coaching was good, but it wasn't like, wow, when I was in complete flow. And I was like, well, that's okay. It still felt aligned. Like I enjoyed it. And I really believed that it was my sole purpose to be like a coach.
Mm.
And funny enough, I believe it was like a year later. Um, so I tuned into my guides again and I asked the same question. And I'm like, so who am I? And they're like, you're a channel and a healer and a teacher. And I'm like, yeah,
Same
so
here.
coaching. And they're like, no, we never said that. And then they laughed, and I'm like this really triggered the shit out of me. I was like, what? Why did you tell me? And they're like, no, you needed the experience. And I'm like, okay, like, have I just wasted? Like it really was like triggering because I'm like, what do I
Yes.
know if I'm not a coach with a, I've gotten all these certifications. And they said that just tap like order offer free sessions where you're doing like healing. I'm like, I don't know anything. I don't know how to heal. I don't know what you're talking about. And they're like, offer sessions to spiritual entrepreneurs, offer business readings. And that was also something that didn't make sense at all because I'm like, I'm a newbie at business. Who am I to do business readings? I've never done that. And then I
Mm,
do this. And then they just said, when you're doing it, you're just going to remember, and we're also going to be there. And
yep.
I mean, that's pretty scary. Like, if you're a person like me who's very, you know, logical thinking, quite a lot, like at
Yep.
that point, very much in my masculine energy, I'm like, okay, I just need to surrender and put myself in a situation where I can be completely humiliated because I don't know what
Yeah.
I'm doing. And then I do that. I follow the guidance. And oh my God, I start like, I just knew how to do everything. I knew how to heal. I knew exactly what to do. And the results were insane. Like, it was not even comparable to what I could do with coaching. And I'm like, oh, all right. And it felt so easy and it felt so flowy. And
Mm,
the same thing with the business readings. And the funny thing was, I hadn't been I hadn't had a lot of success in my coaching business. I was making no money. And all of a sudden, all these people were asking how they could work with me. And I'm like, what? Is this what flow feels like? Because it felt like I was just tapped into my essence and it was playful and it was fun and it gave me
mm,
energy. And this is what it means to be tapped into your gift. So a lot of the time, people do their purpose work, but maybe they've chosen from the level of the mind what they think makes sense. And
mm.
it's not really flowing because it's not completely in alignment with their soul essence, with who they are, or their unique gifts that they're here to share with the world. So if you
And they're
are a
still trying to
psychic and a
control it
healer
a bit.
and you go and do something like coaching, like of course it's not going to flow. It's going to be like pushing a rock up a hill. You won't magnetize the people that you're here to serve. So I would say it's always super helpful to get a soul blueprint reading to figure out like,
Hmm.
okay, what is my path? And a lot of people that already know are not really actually fully aligned with it. And when you create these like tiny tweaks, sometimes it is the tiniest tweaks. That's when things um, really start to unfold. So it's really a beautiful path because when you do follow your soul path. I know this sounds really fluffy. I would have never believed this if someone told me this a couple of years ago, but there is a path that you have chosen before incarnating on this planet, okay? So before
Yep.
we arrive here, we think about, okay, what do I want to come to this very dense planet of it, this dense existence? Like, who am I going to be?
Painful
What do I want to
truth.
do?
Yep.
And our soul essence is that which is unchanging, obviously. But the traits that we have acquired through lifetimes of experience are there in our DNA. They are already
Mm.
there. Some of them are active when we incarnate in this world, and some of them are laying dormant. But we have actually decided what our soul's highest destiny is. And
Mm.
this is something that it was articulated so beautifully. I had a client session. We do a 3 hour intensive, like when I start working with them, and we were channeling on her soul purpose. And what it is that I invite people to do is not set their goals from what their logical mind wants. It's more like, what is the mission that God has placed into your heart? What
Hmm.
is that? And that is the soul remembrance. So then when I start to channel it for them, they're like, of course, oh my God, it's like a remembrance because it's that vibration and the frequency of the words that's landing, which is, it's just so beautiful to see how someone gets completely activated just by the information being like, of course, this
Yes.
is who I am. And when you choose that soul destiny that you've chosen, you already have all of the traits that you need to be able to fulfill that. If
They're
someone would
just
have told me
waiting.
this a year
Yep.
ago, I would have like, no, that sounds
Yeah.
like some kind of fluffy magical thing. But when you choose that highest aligned soul destiny timeline, because we have so many different timelines and we have free
Mm.
will. So everything we do has, a consequence, or we can shift timelines. But there's one that is our highest soul destiny timeline. And when we choose that, that's when these traits start to click into place. This is when your soul
Mm.
gifts come online. This is when you start to remember how to do things. And that naturalness and that flow just is there. I hope that makes sense. It sounds really
That,
fluffy, but it's actually
no,
true because I
I
see
think
it all the time.
I think you've articulated it so brilliantly, and this is exactly what I'm saying to my listeners as well, is this is the point. You need to figure out who you are first, however that happens, whether it's coming through a spiritual awakening or whatever the circumstances, you need to come back to you. From that point, you can start to step into your true path. But why do you want to do that? For exactly all of the reasons that you've just said, because that's when flow begins. That's when life doesn't have to feel like such a struggle every day. That's when you start to manifest things like you're saying. When you let go and you're ready to receive and you open up and you have that faith and you believe that it has already happened with such strong faith that you can't even shake it, all of these things just start to gravitate in. And for so long, we've been taught that that's just all, that's crap. That's just stuff in movies. That's magic. You know, what is magic? And it's really tainted our understanding of what's possible. So it's really important that you're talking about these sorts of things because you are an embodiment of what is possible here. One thing I did want to touch on though is for people who haven't had any sort of spiritual upbringing or maybe have had a very religious or non-religious upbringing, when you say God, what do
Mm.
you mean?
Whatever you want to call it, source.
Absolutely. Yeah,
Yes.
that's what I was going to say. And I mean, that's the thing. Everyone has a different relationship with that word, right? Some people have
Yes.
negative connotations, some people have really specific ideas of the being that that is. And, you know, to me, it is all. It is
It is
creator, it
all
is
that is.
source, it is, you know, it is us, it is all of us. We're the same thing. So, and that's the other thing that I think we forget so often is that we are all connected. That's the only reason we can do all of these things that we're doing. It's the only reason you can tap into my energy. We're all like the fingers of the same hand. Like we're all just living these different experiences, but we're all
Yeah.
coming back to the same thing. And that's why I think ayahuasca and plant medicine is important to sort of show people sometimes if they're really, you know, you got to be willing to go open your eyes a little bit if you're going to do one of those journeys. But it's a great way to just get a quick catapult into, oh my gosh, all of this does exist. Oh my God, it's just there. Oh my gosh, and it's technicolor. What the heck? Everything. Oh my gosh, we'll go into that in another session. So many plant medicine journeys that for me didn't didn't show me too much. It did show me the fabric of reality and showed me like serpentine energy of everything. But a lot of the time, my guides just pretty much laughed at me and said, "You already know. You already know." So I feel you. I feel you when you say, you know, they don't want to show you your true path yet. Like you're on it, right? You're on the birthing stages of it, and you're already in your flow. So I can only imagine how powerful you're going to be a few years from now because the work you're doing already is so deep. But I get that pain because I'm very much like you. I'm like, okay, so you exist. There are all these different realms and dimensions and possibilities, and everything's vibration and frequency and light and blah, 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 blah. It's fantastic. So, what am I doing? What's my path? Come on, tell me. I'll do it. I'll do anything. I'll do whatever you want me to do. Come on. I want to get in line. I want to like be aligned with everything and be able to help people. And that's all I've ever wanted. And it's radio silence. And it comes back to you already know. You already know. It's like, oh, okay, all right. So I'm gonna trust myself. That's a big part of the learning on this journey for me. But I also wanted to ask, when you were doing these moves into this whole new career that you've started, what sort of support did you have from people around you? Did you have support? Did you have anyone who was backing you? Were your family very much, you know, behind you on this, or were they kind of going, "What the hell is this girl doing? She was a lawyer 5 weeks ago." Like,
Um, that's a great question. I had so many fears and beliefs. I was like, I'm going to humiliate myself, like, a lawyer coming out of the spiritual closet. What are people going to think of me? And it wasn't like, just because I opened up, I'm like, yay, okay, 2 feet in, I'm ready to go. Like I still had one foot in each world. And I noticed that I was so scared of people not taking me seriously that I was some kind of crazy person. I even remembered like when I had just opened up, I went to like my favorite yoga class and my yoga teacher, I had a conversation with her and then I told her because I thought she would obviously be open to these things and she looked at me and she's like, "So you hear voices?" And I was like,
all
"Okay." People aren't as open
right,
as I
moving
think.
on, moving on.
But I told my family and I mean with an Indian background, like obviously like I even channeled a bit from my mom. She's like, "Okay." So she's been super supportive. She's like, I just want you to be
Amazing.
happy. And I was like, what? Aren't you going to tell me I'm irresponsible and should go back to getting a... She's like, no, just do what makes you happy. Like, I had not expected that at all.
Oh,
She's
that's
been
beautiful.
incredibly supportive, and so have like friends as well. And I did not expect that. And it's the funny thing is that all most of this is really going on in your own head, because I'm like, oh, but what if I talk about this stuff on Instagram? What are my like former classmates from uni gonna think? Like, why should I
Mm.
even care? But like these people ended up booking sessions with me.
Oh,
And
wow.
but it was an identity thing for the longest time, and that's another thing that is really important to do, because I see this for a lot of people as well, is that they're already doing the thing, but they still have one foot in each world. Like, okay,
Mm.
I'm not all in because I'm not entirely sure this is going to work out. So obviously I don't want to disentangle from my previous identity of whatever it is, because that might be the thing that I'm actually falling back to. And
Mm.
that's where I was for the longest time. And what becomes really clear is like, okay, when you learn about who you are and what your highest aligned timeline is, you need to choose it. You need to
Yeah, you
actually
gotta
say,
do
I
something.
choose this, both feet in. And it can be in the most subtle ways that your subconscious is not entirely on board. For me, it was that I noticed myself saying, when people asked, what do you do? I would say, well, I'm actually a lawyer, but that's how I would
Yeah,
introduce myself. And I'm
yeah.
like, wait a minute, I'm introducing myself in this way because I don't think that people will take me seriously if I'm like, I'm a psychic channel and a healer. Um, and so yes, friends and family, it's been absolutely fine. I do live in Sweden though, and it's not the most spiritually open place.
Oh,
So
really? I don't
yes.
know much about it. Yeah, right. Okay.
Oh, like religion here, like no one, like it's stuff you don't talk about because people are like very logical, don't believe in anything that can't be scientifically proven. And
Okay.
so I would say the only thing that I've noticed is that I feel a little bit more like a fish out of water living here.
Mm.
Um, but that being said, the following my path has also opened up so many doors. I've met so many new people, like in the online space, that I've met in real life as well, and
Mm.
made so many beautiful connections. So it's not like you're choosing a path of solitude because you're doing your own thing. Like the things that are not aligned, they'll fall away. Certain things might not, you might not vibe with people in the same way, but it does open up doors to when you really are aligned with your path, like I mentioned before, when people came out of nowhere and were asking, "How can I work with you?" And
Mm.
when I was tapped into my gifts, it was so that was my mastery. So why was I coaching that? No, I wasn't masterful at that.
Yeah,
When I
yeah.
was tapped into my mastery, that's when I magnetize my soul clients. That's when I magnetize my soul tribe, my like people, my friendships. And that's really when the magic starts to happen, and that is when you are fully aligned, choosing your path. So it's choosing all of it with all the experiences that come along with it, because
Mm.
even though it comes with certain obstacles or things that we perceive as obstacles, um,
Bingo, bingo, right? Things that we
yeah,
perceive as obstacles. Yeah.
because
They're
this was
always the
also...
biggest lessons.
They are, and this was also very beautifully articulated. Like just a couple of weeks ago with a client, she's like, "I want to move through all these blocks and blah blah blah, so I can get to my, highest potential." And the guys were just like, "No, it's like these are not things that you need to power through. That need to just, oh, I need to get rid of this, or I need to work through this, or I have so many blocks or limitations." What they said was so beautiful. It's like everything, we've chosen the path, right? We've chosen the soul aligned destiny. But we have also chosen certain life lessons along the past that will allow us to unlock the
Mm.
traits and characteristics and the gifts that we need to be able to do that.
Yeah.
So these are the things that come in our way. Everything that we perceive as an obstacle or a limitation is there for our evolution and our learning, which helps us. So rather than seeing it, oh, I'm so blocked. This was my limited view of the world before. It was just like, oh my God, I have so many blocks and I have to work through all these things. Rather than having that playful curiosity, it's like a video game. It's like I get a key, I get to unlock it, and then I find the next key, and I find the next
Yeah.
key. And by doing this, it's almost like, yeah, it is like a video game. You're getting to different levels, and you're just
Yeah.
unlocking new things, and new things that are actually supportive for you, that really amplify your power, that really amplify like your gifts, everything that you are. So That's something I want to say as well, because that's super common when you do choose something that is a little bit different to maybe what you're doing now, or that feels uncomfortable outside of your comfort zone. Those growth edges that you're coming up against is really the key to what it is you're expanding into. And if
Yeah.
they weren't there, how would you expand? It's like going to the gym. You need a bit of resistance, right? Resistance training. So you need a bit of
Hmm.
resistance, and that needs to happen. That will also not only catapult you to your next level, but it will also unlock the lessons and the traits and the gold that you're looking for that you need. So it's like a treasure hunt.
Oh my gosh, this has been such a beautiful, like, so much info is just poured out of you. I so appreciate that I haven't even had to talk throughout this. I love it. You are just
See,
a
I
wealth
told you
of
the talker.
knowledge. I love it because everything you're saying is it's also so validating for me to hear it from someone else who is embodying their soul work. This is the stuff that I've been talking about on the videos that I'm doing and all of the social content that I've been creating is exactly what you're saying. So it's just more validation and it's about how we perceive our reality, right? It's all for us, but we've just been told with certain messaging and programs and limiting beliefs that this is an obstacle or this is a problem. In fact, that's the gift. That's the best gift that you need right now in this space of time to get you elevated to the next level so that, like you said, it's like a game. And if you can try and maintain that perspective, you really can have so much fun in life. You can see, I mean, I call like, so when I go for walks around the lake every day, there are some people, you're always walking past people, right? And I'm in a town where not everyone wants to say hello. Like, there's some people that want to say hello, but I'm smiling. Like, you can tell I've been smiling this whole time. I like to smile. It's my thing. So I'm always saying hi to people as I walk past them. Some people really are just like you get a grunt out of them, or they look the other way, or whatever, or not it doesn't always happen, but sometimes it does. That sort of thing used to upset me. I used to be like, why can't people just be nice? And now I look at them and I thank them, not to their face, I thank them after they've passed, and I see them literally as my resilience coaches. They're helping
Mm,
me to be more resilient because everything in this life is just a lesson. Like, we are learning. We're in school, whether we like it or not. We're in this big ass
Earth
school
school
trying to get to this thing that we
to
want to get to.
graduate.
Exactly. But that's the problem, right? We think we want to graduate. It's like we got to enjoy all of the
The
steps
school
along the way
experience,
because it's,
100%.
presence. But
It's
honestly,
not
Nina,
talked about often enough because I didn't
mm,
know any of this when I started out. I thought that everyone had their shit together and something was wrong with me
right.
because all of this stuff was coming up, and that does create a lot of resistance when you keep seeing yourself, because the messaging out there is very much like, yeah, you have to be this, perfect person. You need to,
Yeah.
that is the personal development trap, that there's always something to fix, and there's nothing
Mm,
really that needs to be fixed per se, but just seeing it that way as a video game where you are unlocking what it is. And someone explaining that in a way that makes sense, because you know how sometimes those fluffy terms like, oh, everything you need is already inside of you, like
yeah.
blah. Like I was like,
Yeah.
no, it's not. Like
Yeah.
these kind of things, they're fluffy. And
Yeah.
when you hear like, okay, when you hear this higher perspective that the guides have, that they're like, love your resistance, love
Yes.
it, because it's
Yes.
there to show you your greatness, then it's like, oh, okay, I can actually love this thing rather than hating on it, will make
Yeah.
life a lot easier. So yeah, it is
Absolutely.
really something that isn't talked about often enough. So
Honestly. Oh my goodness. I think we're gonna have to get you to come on another time soon. Maybe like give me a few weeks.
would
I've got
love
so many
to.
questions for you, and you're such a wealth of knowledge. But I'm so grateful. For anyone listening, check out Nina. It's channeled on Instagram. It's channeled by Nina, right?
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Yep. And Nina obviously is just Nina. And check out her readings, her sessions. They're pretty life changing. I mean, like I said, I think it's very apt that you are one of the first people that I'm interviewing on this podcast because I think you had a lot to do with me getting over. I know you had a lot to do with me getting over my visibility issues. I used to be very confident and I've always been okay in front of the camera, but the last few years, especially since I started going through my awakening and going all the way down to all the layers, all the dark night fun stuff, I stopped having that confidence and I didn't want to be seen. So the work that we did together was really, really healing. And it was only a couple of days. It was actually the next day I started writing all this content, and I started doing practice videos on my phone, and you gave me a whole bunch of tools that I could do, and I did all of those exercises. And look at me, Nina, look at me. I'm doing
Here
it.
you are doing the thing just 6 weeks later after your healing session.
Yes, seriously. But anyway, thank you so much, my love. I hope you have a beautiful rest of the day, and I will talk to you very, very soon.
Thank you so much for having me. I really enjoyed chatting with you, and yeah, I'd love to be back.
Awesome. All right, I'll talk to you soon. Bye.